So, a lot of people have asked me what I think about this new Kendrick Lamar's diss toward J. Cole and Drake. And I basically said I would only make a video if I found something interesting to say or I needed to pay an extra bill this month. And I'm going to let you guess which one it is. And this is unscripted. This is really a Babilla video. Shout out Babilla. Babilla's gonna make me look good and coherent in this. In fact, Babilla, this is a Babilla video. Babilla screen right here. Babilla, put your thing here. So, for those who don't know, Kendrick Lamar Kendrick Lamar didn't release it. Future and Metro Boomin released an album on Friday, an album that, as far as I can tell, nobody's listening to except for one song, which is Like That, featuring Kendrick Lamar. The album itself it was alright. It's not my cup of tea. Future is cool. He's good for a couple of dope tracks every year, but a whole Future album has never really been my thing. I will say what's getting overshadowed in the hoopla from Kendrick on this song is that this is the most toxic Future verse I have ever heard. Future is it's almost beautiful. It's actually a really good verse in the sense of playing the character, playing into who we see Future as, because never has a worse man made a verse for a song, written bars for a song than what we're getting from Future here. Some of the shit he's saying is oof, I hope you are not hanging with Diddy. Anyway, another cool thing I noticed that, if you're not a hardcore hip hop head, you won't know, is how legendary this particular beat is. The core part of the beat, that piano bass line, boom, 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 boom. That is a classic hip hop melody. The original person to use that melody was Barry White in a song, I Can't Get Enough of Your Lovin', something like that, from probably the 60s or 70s, that you've been hearing that same piano play right here, Babilla.
1, 2, 3, oh! Feels so good. You lying here next to me. Oh, what a mood. Yeah, this feels.
The same drum, the same piano, it's all over hip hop for the last 30 years. Mos Def used it. I'm pretty sure Jay-Z used it. This beat in particular is, I'm positive, just an old Project Pat beat. It's the same exact thing, just chopped up a little differently. So that's a little cool hip hop lore. But what everybody really cares about is what I think about the verse and any burgeoning beef rap hip hop fun stuff that we're gonna get from it. And I gotta be honest, I'm not overly impressed by the verse, and I don't expect to get much out of it because we've done this before. We did this with Control. Some of y'all may be too young to remember Control, but we did this literally 10 years ago, and the aftermath of that was a handful of really dope Lupe Fiasco songs, and I think that's it. I don't think anybody else responded. In this verse, Kendrick goes at J. Cole and Drake, essentially responding to the song First Person Shooter, pretty much the only song anybody's listening to off of that last Drake album. Be honest, for those of you who actually like Drake, what songs are you listening to off that album except for that song? Anyway, and that song in and of itself is a really good track. I'm not going to take that away from either of them, but was a kind of a moment because I don't know if Drake and Cole had ever worked together. Cole and Kendrick had worked together on a couple of occasions, but I don't know if Drake and Cole had ever done it. And in that verse, Cole says Big Three, and Cole kind of tries to make cool and shout out Kendrick, even though he wasn't involved in the track, just to kind of proclaim. And this is the interesting angle that made me think to even make something. If we go back to Control, what made Control such a big moment is that Kendrick had just released Good Kid, Mad City. And that was the first truly classic album that we had gotten from that new wave of rappers that Kendrick named in Control. So in Control, Kendrick names a bunch of people Babilla's gonna put on the screen right here. Basically, there was a changing of the guard in hip hop. And I would argue that this is the last real genuine era of rap superstars that came out in the mid 2010s, because I don't think you can be a real rap superstar in the streaming era and the TikTok era, but that's different video, different conversation. And so like all of these rappers have been making projects and making albums, but Good Kid, Mad City was legitimately the first like, okay, no, this is a classic. This is the person that's going to lead the new hip hop era. It's Kendrick Lamar. And everybody pretty much agreed. And then like Kendrick being, there's a lot of ego here, but it's kind of like good ego. Kendrick wasn't satisfied with just having an album that was critically acclaimed. He used this verse on Control to call out his contemporaries, not necessarily in a negative, toxic way. He's also trying to be friendly. He's challenging them to step their game up. And if you go back and you listen to what he's saying, like he's basically like, look, I got love for you all, but I'm trying to murder you niggas. And that is awesome. It was an awesome verse. It set the world on fire. Twitter wasn't Twitter at the time, but it was still Twittering when that song happened. And so we fast forward 10 years later, and most of the people that Kendrick calls out in Control are very clearly fading to the background of hip hop prominence. And the only ones left are the big three, Kendrick, Cole, and Drake. Right? And which is funny because like if you'd have asked me early on, like in the early 2010s, who I thought was going to be the next major rap superstar out of that new group, I'd have probably said Wale. I really liked Wale. 100 Miles and Running, Mixtape About Nothing. Like Wale was making really, really good music, but you know, his Maybach music, like wave, didn't quite hit the zeitgeist of the moment. And then Wale kind of decided to be his own thing apart from like mainstream hip hop culture, which I get because mainstream hip hop culture is toxic as fuck. If you'd have asked me who was the weakest out of the group that he called out, I'd have probably said J. Cole, which is wild. Like I've never been a huge J. Cole fan. I like him more as he's like aged with music. But I didn't see it early on, and it really wasn't until the album that most people don't like, For Your Eyes Only, that I started to take J. Cole seriously. Anyway, but that also leads into why I don't think much will come out of this verse that Kendrick did, because J. Cole, I don't think cares. Kendrick has a big ego. Drake has a big ego. J. Cole is not really ego driven. J. Cole is very mercurial. He's very just kind of like vibes. J. Cole's gonna be a great uncle. Like, shout out to whoever gets to call J. Cole uncle, because I'm gonna tell you right now, if you have a dope uncle, you kind of know what I'm talking about. And J. Cole has that type of energy, and that type of energy doesn't get riled up and respond and react to being jeered or needled by someone, even if that person is of significant stature. I just don't see J. Cole really responding. He's almost always interested in doing his own thing. He may give a subliminal, he may give a throwaway line in a guest verse somewhere, but I really don't imagine J. Cole making a response. I could be wrong, but I don't see it. For different reasons, I also don't think we're gonna get a response from Drake. Drake is a bitch. I'm sorry. Drake is very ready and willing to jaw at Meg Thee Stallion and like random other female R&B singers and whatever else. If it's a woman, like Drake probably would have a couple of bars for him, but I think somebody showed it on Twitter. I just saw it. Drake's doing a concert and he's having like a motivational speech about negativity, about why he's probably not going to respond to Kendrick Lamar. Like he's not going to do it. He's not built like that.
Cause you know how I'm feeling? I got my fucking head up high, my back straight. I'm 10 fucking toes down in Florida or anywhere else I go. And I know that no matter what, it's not a nigga on this earth that can ever fuck with me in my life.
The only reason he got away with the Meek Mill shit is because he caught Meek Mill sleeping, and time has kind of shown us that Meek Mill may be a one-trick pony. Maybe he saw that early on. I don't know. We saw what happened with Pusha T, and I just don't see it. I just don't see Drake really responding to a rapper in a situation where he really thinks he can lose. I just don't figure that's gonna happen. I, again, could be wrong. I could be surprised. We slept on Drake before, again, the Meek Mill beef. But the Drake we have now that's been kind of putting out the same album every year for the past 5-6 years, you know, the Drake that's still dating 20-year-olds, I don't see him getting in the booth to bar like that. But I could be wrong. I'll more than happily, because Drake has some really, really hardcore stands that those who follow me know. I'll see it when I see it. But yeah, so like, because I don't expect anything to really come from it, and because I saw this before in 2014 or 2015, whenever the Control happened, because I've seen this before, it don't do much for me. It don't do much for me. It was just, you know, something that Kendrick does. Shout out to Kendrick. I really do think Kendrick is entering into top 5 Dead or Alive status with Morale and the Big Steppers and just kind of the way he's pushed the medium forward. But this was more about competitiveness and establishing and reminding everyone that he is the top rapper of that era, of that generation, the last rap megastar. You could probably say Travis Scott is one. That's arguable. But beyond Travis Scott and Kendrick, like nobody that has come out in the last 10 years has taken on that mantle. And I don't think it's possible to even do anymore. So I see this as Kendrick kind of like explicitly reminding everyone who he is, what he does, and seeing if anybody has the balls to step up and say something. And I don't think Cole or Drake are gonna do that. So it is what it is. And, yeah, that's pretty much all I got. I'm FD Signifier, and this has been Light Work. Bo. I'm sorry. You should cut that out. People are gonna click off the video when they see that.